Não é possível estar na...
Well, you can't be a member of the European Union if you don't respect and accept the values we have in the European Union. I mean, no one is a member of the European Union because they're forced to. We all said we wanted to join because we agreed with those values. Now, some of us who come from countries where there have been dictatorships, we had 48 years of dictatorship in Portugal. One of the reasons why we asked to join the European Union was to guarantee those freedoms and to guarantee that we would have democracy. It's because of those values that we wanted to join. So it's not acceptable that those who do not share those values should be part of the European Union. The European Union and the treaty have their own mechanisms, Article 7 in particular. Poland and Hungary have 2 cases pending vis-à-vis the Commission under Article 7 infringements. These whole procedures were frozen and we picked them up again. And at the General Affairs Council, we had the hearing sessions for Poland and Hungary regarding these cases which had already been opened in the past. Now, regarding the new legislation in Hungary, most members of the Council were very clear about this, and they felt that this was an infringement of the fundamental values of the EU: tolerance, respect of human dignity and non-discrimination.
Now, to address your question about Hungary, well, in Hungary there are 10 million people, and I'm firmly convinced that there are 10 million good reasons for Hungary to be and to remain a part of the European Union. For decades, Hungary fought for its freedom, and for decades it fought to become a democracy at last. But experience shows that on a day-to-day basis we must constantly fight to ensure that we keep our democracies and the values that they foster alive. And our democracies and indeed the European Union is based on those values. That's what makes it so unique, and that's what distinguishes it from other forms. And our democracy is enshrined in Article 2 that I quoted earlier, which sets out the values underpinning our democracy in the European Union. It provides an excellent description of those values, in particular the protection of minorities against discrimination. And this new Hungarian law clearly, unequivocally discriminates. It is discriminatory, and because of that, as it behoves a democracy, using the rule of law instruments, we will take action to counter this. And I'm firmly convinced that we have to conduct this debate also in order to continue to win the hearts of our Hungarian friends and to convince them that democracy is the best way of life. Thank you. Perhaps I could start by saying something about Russia. Could I just repeat that we had a very in-depth debate yesterday evening, and that serves as the basis in order to try to clarify, based on unity and the strength of unity, the principles on which we want our relations with Russia to be based. And I repeated once again that we strongly condemn the disruptive and illegal activities by Russia, and we reaffirmed once again that our sole aim will be the 5 principles. But we did feel, as part of the debate a month ago, that we can't simply respond whenever we are attacked or provoked. Rather, our aim must be to react more strongly in order to defend our values and our interests, and in order to provide more operational content to those 5 principles. And that's what we did at the meeting we had yesterday evening. Now, what are those commitments? First of all, to repeat that the implementation of the Minsk agreements is a fundamental condition in order to allow for a possible change of stance on the part of the European Union vis-à-vis Russia. Secondly, we feel that we need to be committed not just in the form of words and statements, but in the form of acts as well, to support the robust institutions in the Eastern Partnership and to enhance the cooperation capacity between the European Union and those countries. And thirdly, the idea is that we need to strengthen the resilience of the European Union, its ability to resist in key sectors whenever there are hybrid threats or cyber attacks, wherever it is apparent that we need to enhance the robustness of the European Union and its member states in these respects. And then the 5 principles refer to the possibility, whenever there are issues of mutual interest, the possibility of considering cooperation with Russia. And we were more specific than that. We gave examples for certain specific topics, climate, for example, the environment and health, and certain security issues as well, where we ought to be able to consider a dialogue. And as logic dictates, in any European Council, we should explore all the various modalities and conditions, anything which can help to make our dialogue with Russia more productive. So those are the commitments that we entered into. But I do indeed confirm that since I took up office on a number of occasions, I've had an opportunity to have talks with Vladimir Putin directly in order to put across to him the European Union's positions, to defend our interests, and to bring back what he said to the European Council. And on all these points, we will aim to implement these principles, which are our sole aim.
Perhaps on the coordination from my part, and then, yes. On the coordination, important is with the Delta variant. We know it's much more transmissible. It will, the infection rate, it will raise the infection rate, so vigilance, testing, sequencing. On that, the coordination. Second message is the hygiene measures, as boring they are effective. And the third point is vaccinate as much as possible, because, thanks God, we see the protection, very good protection with the double shots against the Delta variant, and a reduction of risks with one shot. And we have right now, with the vaccine progress, one advantage that mostly throughout the European Union, the elderly and the vulnerable groups are fully vaccinated, so they are protected. But the double message is don't reduce the vigilance. It's necessary that we really follow up this Delta variant.
A par de vigilância.
Well, we have to remain vigilant vis-à-vis these variants. We have the European Centre for Disease Control has been talking about the amount of sequencing which has to be done on a weekly basis to ensure that all countries can monitor the development of these variants. When it comes to coordinating entry and exit of people from the EU and from third countries, now on the 14th of June, just 10 days ago or so, there was a publication of the review of the coordination rules which were adopted last October. Now, we're not going to constantly keep reviewing the conditions for entry and exit, which were only identified 10 years ago. So these are the coordination rules which are currently in force, and that is what the various countries have to put into practice, and Portugal too.
Next question.
So perhaps I start, Charles, with the first part of the question. I had on Monday a phone call with President Erdogan, and I was very clear that we know that in due time, I think around the 20th of July, he will visit Cyprus. This is a very sensitive topic for us, and we are very clear that we will, of course, observe how this visit will go, and that we will never, ever accept as a European Union a two-state solution. And these clear messages have been sent. I said it personally to the President. So it's up to him now to set a positive signal. I'm still listening. Go ahead, and then I compliment.
Well, yes. Yes, this is something that the European Council was calling for a few months ago. The Council was asking the Commission to present a first document on the lessons to be learned from the pandemic, and the discussion focused mainly on aspects regarding health, the crisis situations, and the way in which we can learn lessons in order to work together and coordinate more quickly and more effectively, more efficiently. And there is indeed the resolve to take action quickly. And in fact, this will be one of the Slovenian presidency's priorities, and that will be launched formally this evening in Slovenia, the aim being that by the end of the year, at European Council level, we should come back to this issue in order to provide the necessary impetus so that we can make progress and take more formal decisions on this matter.
A lessons learned report presented by the Commission on health. Explicitly, we said this is the first look at it. There will certainly be, at the end of the pandemic, we are not out of the woods yet, there needs to be a second look at that. It was explicitly not on the economic part because this should be done in a different environment. And the topics are, the 10 lessons learned in the Council, in the Commission's recommendations. You asked specifically for a chief epidemiologist. Yes, this is in that report. And as the report was widely endorsed by the leaders, this is exactly what we're going to implement. We think we need a chief epidemiologist just to manage in pandemic times or in a health crisis that needs an epidemiologist. He needs to manage the scientific advice from the 27 member states on the European level.
Clearly, thank you. Yes, well, on the first question on Russia, I've already responded. I've already answered that one. But could I just say once again that debate is not a weakness. Debate is a strength, because debate guarantees the ability to form a united front within the EU. And then, secondly, I'm a little surprised by the terms in which you couched your question, because a few days ago there was a summit between Joe Biden and President Putin, and it wasn't interpreted as a sign of weakness. So it is legitimate that at European level, if we wish to implement principles which we consider to be fundamental to underpin our relations with Russia, we need to be more tangible, more operational. And no one said that tomorrow there should be a meeting of the 27 with Putin. That wasn't on the table at any stage whatsoever. It was all very carefully balanced. As I said, we have a firm position on certain points, but we also need, in certain conditions, to be able to engage at dialogue and to reflect together at European Union on the terms of the dialogue that needs to be conducted so that we can defend our values and our interests. That's the pointed issue. And I was with my colleagues in the room, and so I can tell you that in the course of the debate there was a significant measure of unity when it comes to the objectives and to the means of getting closer to achieving those. So that's what the démarche was all about. On the other question, I think I've already answered that one, but could I just say once again that it is indeed fundamental that we show that we are not simply ignoring it. We're not turning a blind eye to what's happening. We need to have a debate face-to-face, which is what we did with those representing all the member states around the council table. Now, sometimes the European Council is accused of ducking issues relating to fundamental values and just skirting around them, but that's not what we did. We really tackled them head on. And based on yesterday's meeting, I would say that Viktor Orban heard and listened carefully to the various arguments put forward, and it was made clear that Europe, acting under the rule of law, does have the ability to ensure that the treaties are respected, particularly when it comes to fundamental values. Thank you. Yes, I'm firmly convinced that democracy must call for and allow public debate time and time again. That's one of its main features. We must constantly try to do that. We need to fight for that. We need to engage in these debates in order to ensure that we don't keep silent when the values underpinning our European Union are at stake, but rather we want to ensure that the best arguments are put forward. And I'm strongly convinced that if we wish to maintain the rule of law, if we set store by it, then we need to apply the rule of law. Whenever we have disputes, we can't simply leave aside the rule of law and say, oh, well, it doesn't suit us, then we're not going to embark on rule of law procedures as per the infringement proceedings, but rather we will simply draw a veil over what's happening. No. We have to avail ourselves of the mechanisms afforded by the rule of law if that's what we want to abide by. And you asked us about the next steps. Now, I've now sent a letter and we are awaiting an answer from Hungary, and there are further steps that can then be taken. At this point, I would say that the procedure is open. And the outcome is open because it depends on how Hungary reacts. That will determine the shape of the future.
President and Mr. Prime Minister, this concludes our press conference.